So if I could ask our panelists to step on stage, please. Okay. Well, thank you for coming right back. We are going to roll right into our next panel on music and video games and new means of music distribution. So I'd like to thank David Hirshland, president of Bug Music, who's going to be our moderator. Take it away, David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
After you.
No,
please.
after you.
Wow.
Hey, Dave.
Thank you.
Sorry, the schedule. I'm glad to start early so we can all get out there and see some more great music. Might wait a second for people to drift in from the foyer there. I hear a lot of chatter, but I guess we can get started. So, my name's David Hirshland. I'm president of Bug Music, which is a large independent music publishing company based in Los Angeles. We also have offices in Nashville, New York, London, and Munich. We represent all kinds of music, proudly Galactic, among other great New Orleans and Louisiana music. And I really want to thank Rob for taking time out of his very busy Jazz Fest schedule to come do this with us. So what we're going to talk about today, it's a little bit of a takeoff and extension of what y'all were hearing from the last panel in terms of, synchronization and the use of music in audio-visual works. In this case, we're going to focus on the gaming world and all of its aspects. What I'd first like to do is get you guys to learn a little bit about our distinguished panel. So I'm going to ask each of them to give a brief introduction. We're very fortunate to have two very experienced, I'm not going to say old guys, experienced gentlemen here, Carter Lipscomb and Rick Neal, who have been in video games for now upwards of 20 plus years. So they've been involved in the infancy of video gaming, and of course seen all the changes that have taken place, and in that industry, in this industry in particular, I think what we'll discuss and what you probably already know is those changes are taking place on almost a daily basis. So I'm going to be quiet for a little while and starting with Carter, let these guys introduce themselves.
Hey guys, doing? My name's Carter Lipscomb. I work for Sony Computer Entertainment of America, and I kind of head up a group called Special Markets, and so anything that includes any and everything that doesn't touch normal retail. So I kind of look at putting our games and our equipment in hotels and airlines and cruise ships and anything that doesn't fit that standard retail model. But I've been in video games for about 20, 21 years now. Got my start at Maxis. I've worked at Microprose, at Virgin. So a lot of different companies, and a lot of different experience, and that's kind of my story.
It goes way deeper than that for Carter Lipscomb, by the way. There's bars involved. It gets ugly. I'm Rick Neal. I've worked in the industry a little bit longer than Carter. I was at Electronic Arts testing in 1988. So it's been a long ride for me. Currently, I'm making mobile social games, which are the cool, hot new trend for Glue Games in San Francisco, which are free to download games, and then you pay for the content, micro content during the games. And that business model seems to be booming and taking off right now. But I just spent a year at Disney Interactive doing Playdom and the Facebook social games, and before that, I've been at Microsoft. I got to work on Madden football. That was my claim to fame for 6 years. So I was a producer for Madden football, and currently I'm executive producer. So I run teams in San Francisco and Sao Paulo, and we run about 6 games. We also have another gentleman in the audience, Mr. Mike Mateo, who I've worked with for a long time. He works with me at Glue. So if I have more questions, he actually was the one that launched Karaoke Revolution, which was kind of the precursor to Guitar Hero, with the same developer that Guitar Hero started. So he's got a lot of cogent information for us in that. So, and if you have questions, I'm sure I'll answer them.
My name's Robert Mercurio. I'm a bass player and I was part of the production of a game called Infamous 2, which is coming out in June. It's a PlayStation game that they hired us to create a little over an hour of action play. And the band Galactic that I'm in, we've also licensed a couple tunes to Grand Theft Auto, and we're currently in the discussions with EA about creating a theme song for a new Sims game. So I guess that's why I'm here.
Nice.
Yeah, he's here to keep the rest of us honest. So he'll tell you what it's really like. So I'd like to, without getting lost in the history, but I would like to begin by talking about the evolution of music in games, if you will. And when I say games, I'm using a generic term to kind of encompass this whole world of new media, including mobile apps, which are obviously a growing segment of the industry. But everyone's, of course, heard of Guitar Hero and Rock Band, and I know as a publisher we benefited mightily from those games because they paid per unit. They paid every time someone bought a game, the songwriters got paid. In most video games, that's not the case. In most video games, what's the standard procedure is there's a buyout for, and we'll get into what Galactic did as far as composing. That's another area. But can you guys briefly talk about how music has kind of evolved as far as its use in video games over the years and where we are now?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think in the very beginning, the idea of music and video games, it was more like music and video games, because you'd play a video game and then you'd play your radio in the background, and that would sort of be the music you'd get. In fact, I'll show you something. I'll give you a quick little example, if you just humor me for 1 second, of what it used to be before guys like Galactic came onto the scene and like legitimized us all. Here, let me see what I can find here. I've got something very...
Quite a nice bit of technology you have there.
This is really special and interesting.
Playing all my games on that.
I'm playing all your games on this. In fact, I was playing one, and now I got interrupted, and I'm doing this. But the thing about it is, in the early days, it was nothing more than system beeps and very, very mild, very heavily synthesized sounds, and they kind of went something like this. Let me. I'm gonna forward here to some.
You're a whiz with that thing.
See, that's music and video games. That's where it all kind of started, and then it got a little bit better. That's hot, isn't that? Oh my God! Now listen, everybody.
Yeah.
And that's got a great beat, and you can dance to it. You can ask Pac-Man. Now, that kind of gives you an idea of the way it used to be. And, this was like single channel. We're going to just throw it out there and kind of keep you occupied. And nowadays, you kind of look at not only what music, the importance that music and songs and stuff like that have in a game, but the environment that it creates. So when you go into a PlayStation 3, for example, and it's a full 3D experience with your 3D TV, we expect the sound to follow along and complement that. So we have spatial audio. So if there's a sound coming from this room, you're going to turn around. It takes place in the 3D space, and it's very immersive. And you're going to walk in here and you're going to listen to some songs there, and you're going to walk over there and you're going to hear sounds and footsteps and ambient music, very much like you would in a cinematic type of theme and a cinematic type scoring. And I think that this is what these guys are going to talk a little bit about and their experience on how and how that's evolved over the years.
I think from my point of view, it's all about the technology and how that has changed. So the first games I was working on were one single voice oscillator chip that took 4K of music, and I know that probably doesn't mean anything to you, but that's what it was. Wow. And it wasn't until the CD-ROM came along that we finally could have access to real, what we called red book audio, real audio, and so the production values, and then the customers, as technology changes, expect the technology to work for everything that's in it. So you constantly have to re-evolve and reinvent things. So we went from having programmers that wrote the music, literally, that just programmed and the sound made it to now we're hiring bands and we do the same thing that a record company would do in licensing music like Electronic Arts does. But the opportunities are growing way bigger than ever because as the technology changes, there's more ways to get to it. When I was in the early 90s, we had one Pro Tools system for the whole of Electronic Arts that we all had to use, and now everybody has it at their desk. So the amount of quality material that you can get through and the amount of technology that people use is much greater. So I just think it's more opportunity at the end of the day.
I think, just as an outsider, I think that also, yeah, I agree with your technology thing, but I think like people's systems have gotten amazing. I mean, people have 5.1 surround sound systems in their bedrooms. It used to be,
by the way, $12,000 in 1990.
Yeah, it used
a little box.
It used to be everybody would play on a little black and white TV with a speaker this big, so it really didn't matter that the music was beep, 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 whatever. But now it's like you're sitting in the experience and you're in a huge 52-inch screen, and you know, kids are like, you kind of gotta make it sound better. And I also think it was something that we experienced when we were working on this game. We recorded 2 days of a 65-piece orchestra, live orchestra at Skywalker Ranch for a video game, and we were just blown away. I mean, we had people up at the ranch saying, like, you know, even big Hollywood movies don't do this anymore. Video games do, but movies still just use MIDI strings and are using MIDI strings and stuff like that. It's like, it's amazing how much care you guys really put into making sure that the quality of the music is up to top notch. It's impressive.
We have, if most of you don't know, and I'm not sitting here with the numbers, but the video game industry puts the record industry to shame in terms of sheer volume. You guys can maybe speak to how, you know, what it was in 2010, but the relationship between music and video games, again, it's been an interesting one. Can you just, I think when I was talking about the music-driven games, can you speak, Carter and Rick, maybe briefly about why those have kind of disappeared off the face of the earth at this point and what the evolution of that is? And do you see them coming back? And what I'm talking about is obviously the games, interactive games where you play guitar, you play the drums. What's happened there, and why have those gone away?
Well, you know, I think that first off, you get to a point with almost any type of product or game, and when we think about Rock Band and Guitar Hero and stuff like that, I think that they enjoyed something that not many products or categories even enjoy, where you actually hit 100% market penetration. I think that if you looked at the total install base against the total addressable base, you were looking at probably about 28 million of those units sold. So even from a console standpoint, if you had an install base of 28 million units out there, that'd be significant. And in this case, you actually had 28 million people that went out and actually bought these products. And then I think last year when we closed the year out and we take a look at what the active user base was, you were still at probably about 16 to 18 million. And what happens is you start to really super serve that audience, and it gets to be its own sort of industry. And people say, okay, look, I've played every level pack or every music pack I can possibly find. I've even played some local music packs that I've found online, and it's great and it's fun and it's interesting, but I'm ready for the next big thing. And so what's going to be the next big breakthrough? And I think that, combined with the fact that it got very, very expensive for both Electronic Arts and for Activision to support this, because all of a sudden you were looking for more bands, you were looking for more of these music packs, and the artists were saying, okay, well, we want a little bit more money out of this, and then the labels were saying, well, you're going to need to pay us as well. And so all of a sudden that licensing fee started to erode any potential margin that the publishers had, and so it stopped being as attractive a category. That doesn't mean that it's gonna stop or anything like that, but I think what it means is we're ready for the next big evolution in music gaming.
I kind of agree there. I think technology happened to Rock Band and Guitar Hero. Everybody got it. The the hook of it was off. It's still a party game a lot of people play.
Yep.
The production value, and I think Rock Band Network is a good example of how they're trying to extend that and keep it going. But it's not the new hot, cool thing. And I think something that happened in 2008 to video games was kind of happened to that, where people stopped going home and playing PlayStation. All of a sudden on Facebook and on their phones,
Behave yourself. That's not
they
true.
started having their games in front of them, so they had more access to games in different areas that they ever had before. So they didn't just have that option of just go home to the PlayStation. And I think that's kind of the whole market of video games has gone down as a result of that. So,
yeah, I think it's evolved, and I think that one of the things that we look at PlayStation is we want to be wherever gamers are. So even in that mobile context, no matter what your gaming flavor is, we want to make sure that we're bringing great PlayStation content to those devices and to those experiences.
yeah.
So obviously, just to break it down, there's two ways games use music. One is they license existing music, which we've talked about a bit, and the second is hiring musicians to compose. So, Rob, I'd like it if you could sort of take us back to how that happened for you guys, and because this is a big job, as you were describing.
Yeah, it was. I truly think, we had been trying to get into the video game world for years, and this game just kind of fell into our laps. It's a game called Infamous 2, and it's coming out in June. But the theme behind the game is that it takes place in a devastated swamp town called the New Marais, which is basically the architecture and the mapping of the town is very similar to New Orleans. So I think that in general, PlayStation was looking for a New Orleans band to accomplish the score for it, and I think that over the last few years and us doing a lot of self-production and showing, I guess, just the people at PlayStation thought that we were the band that could handle it, that we could bring in a New Orleans element, but also a dark undertone, and that we could self-produce it, which isn't the case with every New Orleans band. There's definitely plenty of bands that could play New Orleans music, but we are unique in a way that we could work with them, I think, maybe a little better than some of the other local bands. So it started with many conference calls, and I got to say, the people at PlayStation, the main producer, John Mayer, was excellent at describing exactly what they wanted. There was no, we want it to be a little more purple and maybe furry, and it was like, he had definitely very musical descriptions, and they were very specific as what they wanted. It was a sequel to a game that a DJ had done the music for, this producer DJ Amon Tobin, and so they sent us the music for the first game, and then they told us kind of what they were happy with about that, and they told us with what they wanted, they wanted it to be different, and it was a real pleasure working with them. They really knew exactly what they wanted, and it took Galactic outside of our normal bag. They really wanted to push us outside of what we normally do, and it was really fun. I mean, we don't really write music with strings sections and stuff like that, but they wanted that, and so it brought out a different side to the band that we've never done. They wanted they wanted it to be extremely dark and dirty and gritty, and it was just something that we don't normally do when we're trying to make a track. It wasn't like we were making a song, we were making an underscore, and I think that was something really important that we had to keep in mind the whole time, is that we are background music. We're not trying to make a song with a big strong melody and a hook, and you're not trying to take the main focus of the game. You're still trying to keep the player within the game and just kind of accent and enhance what they're doing. So that was something that we had to keep in mind, and sometimes we had to pull back what we were doing on the game just to keep in mind that we are underscore. We're writing music that's supposed to, like I was saying, enhance the game and not take away from it. So we just went back and forth with the producer, John Mayer, almost weekly or daily. He'd send us new cues as to what he wanted out of the next 2 or 3 minute piece. And so we ended up doing about 65 minutes of music. It was about 23 different pieces. And they also came down, a couple of the guys from PlayStation, and recorded the whole band in different configurations. And I think that they used that music to make another hour or so of music for the game. So we were basically doing mainly a lot of the gameplay stuff, a lot of the action. They had also hired another composer who was doing more of the themes that would bring you from one section to the next. What are those called? They're transitional scenes. And so they had a great composer from LA that did that. And they really knew exactly what they wanted. You know, they had him do that. They had, you know, us doing the gameplay and the underscore stuff. And they kind of interweaved the two. They had us work on a little bit of his stuff, and then he put some stuff on ours. And it was a really cool collaborative effort that we were just, you know, really happy to be part of.
How long was the process? I mean,
you know, I kept hours on it, actually, just to be...
Figured you would.
It took 9 40-hour weeks for the band to do it.
Yeah.
Plus a couple sessions that they came down for.
That's pretty fast.
Yeah, which is actually pretty fast. They were really impressed, actually, at PlayStation. They had given us till February to turn it in, and we turned it in August.
Yeah.
So that was, you know, we just worked and got it done. I appreciate that you thought it was fast, because some people...
You got to be a producer, whoever your producer is.
Well, we have a couple, you know, I did a lot of producing, and our sax player did a lot of the producing, and we just kind of turned our studio into like a sweatshop. You know, I mean, everybody was in their corner doing something, and we were just cranking it out. So it was, you know, most of us in there for you know, 40-hour weeks. Yeah, it was about however many hours that is. It's a little too early for me to do the math.
Yeah, but the point is, in many ways, it's a more involved process even than scoring film.
Yeah.
Because you have so many more, you know, potential scenes and
Oh, yeah,
action.
there was a lot more music than there would be in scoring film.
Yeah. So that's great. That's, you know, interesting. So as far as how big projects these are, what do you know, Carter, so just to put it in context, how many units will Infamous 2 sell?
Well, let me look around the room. How many of you guys are going to buy it? Okay, good. So let me do the quick math.
Times.
You're not going to believe I'm almost embarrassed to say, because I know that we're putting this on film and everything like that. And if everybody hears how many it's going to sell, they're probably going to be afraid to go out and buy it. But it's our big summer blockbuster. So we're pretty excited about the numbers. We've got some pretty heavy duty programs in place, and a lot of pre-orders that are supporting this, and it is going to be an absolutely phenomenal title. And I got to tell you, with the music and the scoring that was done, whoever those guys were at Galactic that did it, I think that made all the difference. I think that's why there is an Infamous 2. But it really is a great game. I've had an opportunity to play it, and I think that it really is going to be one of our best and biggest titles of the year.
Well, thanks.
Cool.
So you skirt the issue. How many copies did you think it was going to sell?
He's
He's a fine Sony employee.
executive.
It's early in the morning. I was hoping you guys would forget that question.
I heard a number.
Okay, let's
Yeah,
see.
go
What
ahead.
number?
I was up because I went and visited the game developer Sucker Punch, and I think they said they were hoping for, you know, somewhere between 3 or 4 million.
Yes, indeed. That's what we're hoping for.
Obviously,
Maybe
not many,
even more.
Obviously, not many albums sell that much these days.
No.
So let's talk a little bit about where we're going, guys. I mean, where is, you know, obvious. I didn't want to bring it up, Carter, and I'm not really bringing up the whole Sony issue that it kind of hit the front pages a couple weeks ago about the loss of, you know.
That's great. Let's.
So I won't bring that
on.
up, but it does. But it does lead us into, you know, how are games evolving? How are people? You know, we mentioned that people don't necessarily go home and play Guitar Hero anymore. They're more online with their friends. It seems that's where this is all headed. It's all social and.
Yeah, it is, and I think that we at PlayStation recognize that, and we've got a device that if any of you guys are in the Los Angeles area in June, we're going to be showing our next generation portable at that show. And it is, I got to tell you, it's like having a PlayStation 3 almost in the palm of your hands, and it's absolutely wonderful. The fidelity and the gameplay experience is incredible. I don't think there's ever been a more powerful portable device for gaming brought into this industry, and I think that experience is really going to support what it is that we were talking about here in terms of being able to take your game experience on the go, and really not without compromising or settling on that quality. I mean, sometimes I think that when you look at the mobile space, you go, these games are good and they're clever and they're good enough. But you know what? What we're looking to do is sort of take it to the next level and say, imagine being able to take that experience that you get in a home gaming environment on the road with you, wherever you go. Does that answer?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, yeah. And so, Rick, yeah, go ahead.
From my point of view, from not being a Sony employee, I think Apple changed the whole world by giving everybody the iPod 2 and the iPad and those touch screen generation things. The amount of power of technology that is probably represents a $4 million computer in 1990. That's how powerful they are. And some of the content you'll be seeing coming on those things, and why Sony is getting in that is because it's the entertainment experience is transitioning to where people want to have it when they have it, not when they want to go somewhere and get it. So the opportunity for you to have all those eyeballs, the most important thing for me is my customer logs in and starts playing the game. I know what he's doing, when he's doing it all the time. So now all of a sudden we have what we call telemetry about all of our customers all the time. And I can see, hey, 120,000 people yesterday bought this gun. So perhaps we should make some more of those guns so we can make some more money on that. And that gives us the opportunity also to say, you know what, let's start changing musical content, let's start changing digital content in the game in itself, so the game, as the player can play it, will evolve and change with it. And I think that's where, so what used to be, what did you do, 80 hours of music for them? Or how many hours of content did you deliver?
Oh, only a couple hours.
Yeah, so we're going to need like 180 hours in the future, because the content's always going to have to be changing all the time. And it's not about the amount of money that makes, it's about the expectation of the customer at that time going, well, other things are doing this, and I want that too. I want that experience. So you have to keep up on the cutting edge, and you have to deliver that content to them. So what I think is going to happen is the giant funnel of I want more content than ever is coming. So.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that, and I would also agree with the fact that, with digital distribution and with PlayStation Network and everything like that, when we look at the opportunity that's there, we can respond, to Rick's point, very quickly to what customer needs and wants are. So we see something that resonates well with customers, we can then serve that customer very, very quickly, not only on the development side, but on the delivery side, because suddenly we respond by saying, oh, we see that everybody likes this soundtrack, we see everybody likes this particular gun or this particular experience. We can deliver those experiences quickly and online to wherever they are, so that you don't have to be at home to download this. You can be on the road, or you can be on your way to work, and your friend can tag you and say, hey, you know what, have you downloaded this new level or this new equipment pack or whatever, and you can do it in real time right then and there.
So do you see there being more opportunities then for music, for musicians, for acquired content, music in games? I mean, do you just see this?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the bigger things, because as customization happens, right now you can change your face of Tiger Woods in the game, but in the near future you're going to say, I want these. They even did it in Madden for a few years, but they gave you preformed tracks that were on the CD, but I want this music to play while I'm going at it. And so you're going to be able to just select from, you're going to get more and more what we call in boutique content for people, and say, hey, this niche of, death metal guys really want this song, let's put it on that level, and then monetize it. So that people will pay. It's like, well, I know it comes with a dorky song, but I want the death metal song for $1.50, and there it goes, and then it starts, and then you keep changing that content. So yeah, that's where I think the content's going to change, and then more of it's going to come. So it's not really getting more broad and pop, where it's going to be Lady Gaga. It's going to be more segmented and everything, and the games are going to have to support all that different kind of content.
So you said a key word there, and that was going to be my next topic, which I'm sure is on the mind of everybody. Certainly on mine is monetize. So
Yeah, that's our big buzzword now.
We've been involved with Tap Revenge. We've had Tapulous, and it looks good. It's a nice thing to talk about, but ultimately, is there a way for people for the music owners and the composers to really make money in this field? And how do you see that happening? Are we talking about because people are are we talking about a revenue percentage model? How is it that the money's going to get delivered to the artist?
Negotiate for us, so he's got to know. This is an inside scoop right here.
Well, I don't know. Rob can tell you what he did. He got paid.
Yeah, we got paid like a flat fee to do this. We've had different things from licensing to this was more of a work for hire, straight up, payout. This thing that we're talking about doing with EA is going to be another work for hire. You guys really seem to like to own the piece and not have to pay the bands ever again. Seems to be the games model, which I can understand is great for the game company. It's a little, as a band, it's a little harder, to give up a song forever kind of feeling, and more bands are having that feeling right now, I think, than ever, because they just don't know what's going to happen to that song forever. But at the same time,
can you play some of those songs tonight?
I can still play them. You're right. But at the same time, you guys, it's been very lucrative. I mean, they pay well, and obviously, there's a reason that we've done it. We felt good about it.
Well, and I think the other thing too, and I mean, Rob, you're going to maybe agree with me on this as well. I think that it's as much about getting exposure, from a new band perspective, as it is being able to monetize that content. I mean, would you agree with that? I mean,
yeah. I mean, I guess like I believe we have a tune in Guitar Hero, which I think is also a good. That's obviously easy exposure. Your name of the band's right there. It's your song they're playing. It's from one of your albums. I mean, that couldn't be more of a tie-in directly to a band, to their music, to their albums. We've been from Infamous. It was. It'll be interesting to see what it is. I think our name's been a lot in the press attached with it. I think that we're going to get a lot of attention in that way, but it's not as direct where somebody is literally playing the game and underneath it says like Galactic. It's not. They're going to have to. The regular Joe Schmo, Joe the plumber, gamer is not going to maybe know that it's Galactic. But that wasn't truly the reason why we did it. We did it for other reasons, and we just money did help. And also, it was a really fun project to take on, and it was something that we hope leads to further projects.
I think this is one of the things that might be changing. So traditionally, we've always wanted to own all of our content because we pay so much royalties. So I can, now that I'm not at Electronic Arts or any of these companies, I can say Sony takes a big chunk of money out of your pocket every time you make a disc for them. So the relationship between the customer has to go through Sony, or it has to go through Microsoft, or it has to go through Nintendo. And you lose a chop right off the top that's pretty big.
Well,
so then if you have something like Madden, and then you pay the NFL, and you pay NFL players, and then you pay John Madden, and you pay Pat Summer, all that adds up to the point where you're like, well, how much do I really get to go home? Then I have to pay the government 40% tax. So it gets tougher and tougher. So the traditional model has always been like, own all the content, because we're going to launch it on PlayStation 1, but then we might put it on the PC, and it might go to the Nintendo, and if I have to pay royalties every time I move that around, it gets super expensive, and it's just not worth it at that point. So that's why the gut reaction.
Yeah.
But I think what's changing in it is because the content is now being delivered so fast and so quickly and can change so fast that if you have good relationships with video game people or in that community, they're going to be looking for so much content that, you're not going to say every time somebody downloads that song, I'm going to get $1.20, but it might be 4 cents. Right? If you could say, in this game, there's a niche, I get that I bring my whole band crowd to you guys, which is a huge thing. And before, I would say to bands, look, I make John Madden football. I don't need your band name here to make my game bigger. Now it's the other way around. You can walk up to somebody and say, look, you got 100,000 people playing it every day. I can bring my audience of 30,000 people to you, and you can grow that, and your whole audience will grow. So we're at a scale now where these smaller niches and these smaller boutiques actually matter. But the problem is there's no vessel to get to those people. You just have to be in the know or online with them or in the game community or such a geek that you know those guys. And they'll come out of the woods, works like the guy that found you from Sony. They came to you, right? So I don't know how to get there, but that's definitely what's changing. And I see it changing super rapidly because more and more content needs to happen for these downloadable games. They don't want to listen to the same song all over and over again. They want it to change.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we have about 10 minutes or so I want to open it up to you guys for questions. If you have any questions for the panel, please step up to the microphones on either side, on either aisle.
Hi, I just want to know, in developing and designing a video game, to get patents, should I get patents on both the music and the game itself? And you get two paid, or can that design, the music that goes to it, the soundtrack to it, be a part of their same trademark with the patent rights to the music, to the video game?
Well, you've mentioned three distinct areas of law: patent, trademark, and the third you didn't mention was copyright. So the music, if you're writing your own music, anytime you compose your own music, you should copyright it. Now, in the case, for example, the work for hire, so if you're hiring someone to compose for you, then you're going to own the copyright and you should file the copyright. As far as there's not a, I mean, I'm actually not, you may have to ask a real lawyer. I just play one on TV about what's involved, what's involved in terms of, or maybe you guys know, in terms of when do you first register the design of the game? Is that also a copyright?
Copyright designs. We copyright technologies in a game. It's like the processor does this funny thing for us. So we patent just technologies that are inside the game itself, but you can't patent a game idea, or you can't patent a gameplay idea, or that somebody tried to patent how you use a joystick. That stuff just never holds up.
The last little comment is, the racetrack closes. I mean, it doesn't open up until after, but they have a new game there, American Idol. So that, and it's with the contestants singing out and everything. So with that game, that's royalties. I guess you have to already have the contestants on American Idol singing your song, your music, and then you get paid that kind of way out. I'm just was trying to figure out that it's opened up so great to try to get your music in that new game, American Idol, and you have to be a contestant or wait for American Idol to be a contestant, and they use your music on the American Idol.
Are they using like big hit songs like American Idol usually
like
does?
Like the game show. So
yeah.
The racetrack, it slots doesn't open up to after the fest is over with, but that's their new game now. It's American Idol. So they're with the music. You might want to check it out.
Cool, thanks.
All right. Suzette?
Yeah. My question is, I'm an entertainment lawyer. When I first started doing licensing to video games, it was usually a per unit on the music with an advance. Do you think it's going to come back to that now that you're talking about like a Lady Gaga type song? So there's a master, a sync, and a per unit and an advance?
I don't think it ever goes back to that as far as the bigger publishers go. But as far as smaller guys, there's probably opportunities when they have a smaller game that you could participate in it. But then again, you're taking some of the risk up at the upfront with it, right?
So how would you monetize, or how would you pay Lady Gaga for her music? Who would you pay?
With her, you'd have to go straight to her publisher. What I'm talking about is bands that aren't signed to a big label and want to represent themselves and find ways to get into games that way. If it's Lady Gaga, I can't afford that. For my $100,000, the money that she needs.
Well, that's what I was wondering. It seems to me like it would be like almost licensing to film at that point.
Yeah. It's back to the big titles and the big PlayStations.
All right. Thank you so much. Y'all have been great. I'm chair of this committee, by the way. So
thank you.
I'm thrilled you guys are here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good job, Suzette. Yes.
I have several questions, but I'll try and keep them short. To Robert, when you said you went to San Francisco or above San Francisco at Skywalker, you said they knew exactly what they wanted. Is that a music soup? Who was telling you what they needed?
It was music supervisor from PlayStation. There's there's different levels. There was the one that we dealt with more directly was this guy John Mayer, and then his boss is Chuck Dowd.
You got Chuck Dowd.
Dowd, and then there was another guy even above him. So they were all there at the session, and all the music was already pre-written, and they were just like basically we had written music on a MIDI keyboard, like string stuff.
So they gave you instruction of what they were looking for. You came back here, put it together, went back there, and then they said
then they had this 65-piece orchestra recreate the music, which was pretty amazing and probably pretty expensive.
So having gone through this experience, would you do it the same way again?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and it was up to them. I mean, we personally were fine with the sound of the keyboard MIDI strings, but they were the ones that wanted to make it recorded with a real orchestra and just have better sound quality.
Maybe we can get them record here with a real orchestra next time.
Yeah,
now that they've had this great experience with Louisiana Talent, right?
Yeah. Hopefully they will.
Because we've got the facilities and
the tax breaks and stuff like that we have down here.
Thank you very much. So to Carter and Rick, would you suggest that for the larger, major video games, it's mostly composing? Otherwise, it's mostly licensing?
I think it's very rare that you find somebody that will let you tell them what to do. As an video game producer, I've hired many bands that are like, no. The fact that you let them produce you is great because that hardly ever happens. So that work for hire stuff is usually pretty hard, and it's like, this is my song, take it or leave it. Unless you get guys that are totally into the game and whatnot, and they want to formulate things, then it becomes more of a partnership, and that kind of gets lost in the weeds in the development process.
But with regard to composing, most of that would be for the larger games. The smaller mobile
Right, so people like
games are going to
Sony
be
and
mostly
Electronic Arts, they have a whole music licensing studio.
Yeah.
They have Electronic Arts has its own music label inside of it that they run.
And are the same soups making those decisions both on the composition side as well as the placement side?
For most companies, except for Sony, the game teams develop what they want to do. So the guys that were making the game for Sucker Punch got help from corporate Sony Music saying, we can help you with this part of it.
Got it.
So it's like the old movie studio thing. It's like, well, let's just hand that off to those guys and they'll handle it. Most other people just run the whole thing gambit from inside their studio, and it's like, call that guy up and see if he can make some sounds for us. So,
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm going to try and hit you up afterwards as well. Thanks, Coach.
Go. Yeah.
I do have a question.
Speaking of infamous, that's
Hey,
Mike
guys.
McHale, isn't
Infamous
it?
number 4.
Wow.
I also work in the video game industry, and I've crossed paths with these guys. But before, I do have a question for Robert. But before that, I just want to comment on something that was said earlier about music games, where kind of the music is the content. And I don't really believe they've gone away or they've died. They just, I think Carter mentioned it earlier, but it's important to note. So every game has a life cycle, and people's interest in that game kind of rises and then comes back down. But so there's a number of new games, one called Just Dance and something called Dance Central for the Microsoft Kinect, that actually have been huge hits very recently. So this category is not going away. People are very interested in interacting with music directly as part of their game. And actually, it's always when you build this kind of game, you have the potential to reach a much greater audience than, let's say, a shooter, because there tend to be family games, people playing in their living rooms with groups of people and so on. So Dance Central is actually quite a big hit for the guys that made Rock Band. So anyway, my question for Robert is more of a kind of a business question. So you obviously did work for hire, did this cool soundtrack. I was wondering if there's any plans to publish that on CD, and then how do you guys?
They
what
are.
Kind of, and then do you guys
we get
share in that?
Yeah, we get publishing royalties on, and they do on their big releases. They do put out a companion soundtrack that's available, on hard disk and also like iTunes download, and we do get paid publishing on that use.
Great. So you have a chance of making incremental revenue on top.
Yeah,
of it.
if it becomes a huge hit on the soundtrack, it'd be great. I think they say they sell between 5,000 and 20,000 copies of those, so doesn't seem like it's going to be as big of a hit as the game. But if there is other uses, we are covered and getting revenue from that.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thanks for looking out for us.
But to be clear, you don't control it. So it's your publishing company does not control it. You'll get writer royalties.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We can't control what they do with it, but
Right.
we'll get more money. Thanks.
How you doing? Good morning. I was thinking, when I think of recognizable video game music, I think of like the composer Koji Kondo for Nintendo, who wrote Mario and Zelda, who was writing at a time with very restricted technology, so it kind of forced him to be very cyclical and thematic in his composition. My question is, do you think that the industry of video game music has changed so much that it's transitioned to the normal traditional music industries where, kind of like Mr. Bloom was talking about, where you almost kind of have to dumb down your songs to think that they'll be successful and picked up, or is there still a large market for this old style 8-bit thematic music that, because Koji Kondo would not have been successful in the traditional music industry as a performing artist. What would you say to an artist who was more interested in the work that someone like he performs as opposed to someone who wants to be a traditional performer, like a stage performer?
You want to take that one? Go ahead. You
Look, what I think is that people are going to evolve to the technology that exists, and I think that as a musician, you're gonna be forced to be creative in whatever environment you're working with. And I guess to a certain extent maybe it seemed, in retrospect it seems a little easier to go back and say, hey, look, we were working in this very restricted environment, and so we knew what we had to do to develop the music within that context. And now it's so broad and so huge, that the canvas is blank and you have to go in and try to figure a way to fill that up. But I think with all the great musicians that are out there and the great composers that are out there, I think when you look at the soundtracks and the scores that are being made for these games, it's once again we recognize in our industry great music composition every year at various awards ceremony, DICE and Game Developers Conference and stuff like that, where we take a look at music in games. We take a look at all the different aspects of development and really recognize these people. And sometimes the composers that you hear about in video games are not the composers that you hear about in movies or music. Sometimes they are, but does that sound?
Yeah, I think as the bigger blockbuster titles will have now evolved to the point where you can basically treat that like a Hollywood movie or a real production or Broadway play at that point. Guys are famous and they actually have a concert that goes around the United States that just plays video game music that really? Tommy's been running for a few years and it's been really successful.
Well, yeah, he's been running that for it's called Video Games Live, and if I don't know if it tours through the New Orleans area, but I'm sure it does. See, that's really fantastic. And if you haven't checked that out, Tommy Tallarico has been part of the the fabric of video games music, for 15, 20 years, and for as long as I've been around. So, and he's really done a very spectacular job of performing that music and really creating something special. It's not just playing music, but really creating an immersive show, and it's really a special show. If none of you guys have seen it, you should definitely go and check it out.
And I have one other request. The previous panel did kind of a discussion on the monetary, because y'all talked about monetization. They talked about the monetary expectations of independent artists as far as what they can assume or expect and kind of the ranges. I thought it was kind of a secret glimpse into a world that most people don't get to see because those things are kind of normally agreed with behind doors. Could y'all do something similar to that about what could be expected by independent artists in the video game and music industry?
Once again, I think that Rob has got the most contemporary, experience with that.
I don't feel really comfortable discussing. I don't think I'm allowed to, but I think that what I've heard from them is that it all depends on the game. If it's a blockbuster game, if they expect that it's going to sell millions of copies, there's obviously going to be a bigger budget. If it's a smaller game, they might only have $500 or $1,000 to license a song. So the range,
I can give you
it's certainly
kind of
less.
outline. So smaller games that you'll find on iPhone and iPad, you can make the whole game between $500,000 and $600,000, right? So $30,000 is all you're going to spend on all the sounds in that game, right? But blockbusters that are going to be like Madden, where you're going to spend upwards of $2.5–3 million on that game, your sound budget's going to go to $150,000, then it makes sense. And then if you can convince your business partners and your marketing and PR people saying, if I put this band, that's going to get us more exposure, there's better value to that. So they'll think about licensing or getting some co-op marketing or something going on at that point. But you kind of have to be a big hit at that point. If you're just independent, I mean, some of the budgets that I did while I was at Playdom, we spent $3,300 on all the sound and music in a game.
Wow.
Right, and the game had 2.5 million people playing it every day. But it wasn't a part of the game. It wasn't an integral part of the game. Right, it was just something that you put because we have to have music, so I guess we're going to put that in. You know, and it's almost an afterthought at those kind of games. But it depends on the content, depends on the platform, and definitely mostly depends on the audience that you're trying to hit. So.
Thank you very much.
Okay, sure. One more.
Hi,
yep.
David.
Hey.
I was going to ask about, off of what Robert said, the back end for, I mean, it's one thing if you're a band like Galactic and you have that kind of a name, you can demand a pretty big price. I've been working as a film and TV composer in LA for a long time, and that's pretty well monetized. I mean, you have BMI and ASCAP, you get bigger performance rates for a network and smaller for cable, but it pretty much is automatic. And we, as composers, are all pretty aware right now that all the companies are trying to go new technology, keep the back end keep the artists out of the back end. So, as guys who are not the suits, but you're in between the suits and the artists, how do you see is ASCAP and BMI going to be able to get in and be as active players in the video game industry? Are they now, and what are the rates being paid? And how can composers wind up? If you're not a named composer, you're asked. I mean, like I have a buddy named Gary Scheiman who does some really great stuff in video games, and he gets a good rate. But that flat rate doesn't allow you to participate in the progress of what you are, contributing a great. And again, with music is a huge amount of content in every video game. The fees of $3,300 and things like that for 3 hours of music is certainly not uncommon. They're more and more in TV, but with TV you do have that small amount of back end participation.
Mm-hmm.
I think the difference in our industry has always been we're not broadcasters, so we're only getting. And before the freemium model came along, I'll explain that in a minute. It was all about I sell you a game for $16.99, and we all have to participate at that level. And so traditionally, the licensing fees have always been, let's not try to get any because did we make 67 cents on that sale, right? So that's been the aversion of never paying back end, unless it's like we're going to put Lady Gaga on the cover, we're going to have to pay her some royalties. So we've always shied away because we're not broadcasting, we're just selling units up. I think with the freemium model where you're basically downloading free games and then you're paying for content in it, I'm not sure that there's licensing on that level, but I think there's participation in that sale. So if you can bring a market and say, if you guys, there's 38 songs to download for my game, you choose one of them, then you'll participate in that sale, but not in the licensing of every time he plays that music. Because if you got a licensing fee of every time he played the game,
no.
Right, at that point, that's where we break that down to. It's just a sale at that point, but there's no royalty of use after that.
But there's a blanket license that everyone pays to BMI and ASCAP, and then it's doled out depending on how much, and it could be, I would imagine, monetized to sales as opposed to just broadcast. Is that something that you guys would support? Is some kind of a good deal with BMI and ASCAP to be able to trace the sales and put a percentage, even however small, to the content creators?
That's for like the EAs and the PlayStations and those guys to figure out. I think on the smaller handheld level, I don't think they'd ever license a song from BMI or ASCAP. I think they would just go straight.
Yeah, I don't see the public performance.
Yeah, because those are performance. Yeah,
so so you don't see any mechanism for anybody to share in the back end on any music produced for video games?
Well, unless the game, you're not going to have BMI and ASCAP license them though, because again, there's no public performance involved.
But the way all content is going to be delivered, it's exactly down the pipe, whether it's music, whether it's video content, or anything like that. So is video games going to be, by necessity, by technological necessity, removed from the idea of the artist's participation in the revenue stream?
Yes, because it's a contractual relationship between the game companies and the music content owners. And if the game companies don't agree to pay a per-use royalty, then you're not going to see it. That's why these things are buyouts.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, look.
They share with us. So where the song is a level, so Rock Band or Dance Central, you're honestly getting paid a level.
Yeah, that's a different. Yeah,
But not from BMI.
but that's a contractual relationship between the game company and the. And
Well, would a good solution to that be that everybody who contributes video music for video games be licensing it, so it all becomes a licensing kind of thing as opposed to a giving kind of thing?
That'd be ideal for the bands, yeah.
I believe
But
so.
they don't want.
Yeah,
Obviously,
but again,
he's
you're talking
explained why
about
they don't
leverage
want
here, and the leverage belongs to the game companies. So we're going to have to
All right,
wrap
thank
it
you.
up. Yep, thank you. Thanks everybody for coming. I really want to thank Carter and Rick and Rob for donating their time.
Thanks, Rick.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Let's do it. Come on, of course I do. Don't leave home without it.
All right, well, thanks, everybody. Great job, you guys. One more time for Carter Lipscomb, Rick Neal, Robert Mercurio, and, of course, David Hirshland from Bug Music. So if you're going to leave your car here, make sure to pick up a dashboard parking pass before you go. Otherwise, have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning for our final session. Thanks a lot.